The issue is before the U.S. Congress in committee, the Energy Committee, and this is our live stream of my commentary on it. My name is J-Dog. I am the founder of GBAMFS and spokesman, point man for the group. We're going to be reviewing this. We will have more in-depth review in terms of like an actual review of the text and these sorts of things. But these do get changed pretty frequently. There's an amendment process, and we're dealing with this as it's being presented in the committee presently. So this started earlier this morning. It's wrapped up for some of the issues right now. That's basically the issue we're focusing on, but we're going to go ahead and get into it. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. So let me go ahead and switch over so you can see the screen. All right, you should be able to see here the live stream feed. Now, before we go into it, I will say that this is a complex issue. Child safety is very important always, and online as well. The online world is it's a newer form of technology, and it is something that the law has not caught up with. It's not regulated in a way that is necessarily optimal, the best for everyone, and there is definitely stuff that needs to be looked at there. That said, there's a lot of stuff in these bills that is not that's stuff that we don't find to be conducive to gamer interests. GBAMS is a gamer advocacy org, and moreover, I am a lifelong IT guy, like an information technology worker. I have a background in IT, cybersecurity, more recently some physical security, like actual security work, and I have to say there's so many complex issues involved in this that it's kind of hard to get a they're approaching it from many different angles. So you have online safety, right? Like in overall, you have in-game safety, social media, like mental health and social media. You have issues with data privacy, where people's data is being sold, and that's something we're generally skeptical about. Okay, we generally believe that user data has to be protected, and there's a lot that goes into it. So there's many different approaches. They're all trying to be crammed into like one major piece of legislation, and we're finding that that's not, and I mean, in my view as a techie, this is something that's not conducive to furthering public safety and helping public interest. It's there's some kind of carve outs for corporate groups and stuff. There's really a lot to look at. So we're going to recommend against them passing these as they are. We do think that they should go back, revise these bills, look at them, work with the technical community. So on account of that, this is not our group, to be clear. This is the Fight for the Future organization that hosts this website that I'm showing you on the screen. It's Bad Bills, okay, badinternetbills.com. That's once again badinternetbills.com. That will allow you to make your voice heard, get in touch with your Congress people. We're recommending that you participate and let your voice be heard about this because it is not a they're not suitable. They're not suitable and do have the potential to actually meaningfully break the internet, break gameplay. And a lot of other things. So that's it may actually do more harm than good. The bills that are before the Congress right now. So that's badinternetbills.com from the Fight for the Future organization, one of our allies in this space for this. No affiliation, but again, that's something I would refer you to. We're recommending you make your voice heard in any event, but we're recommending against any of these being passed as there. Our group is the Gaming Brethren Advocates Mutual Aid Federation and Society. Once again, gamer advocacy, and we have a heavy tech focus. I have a tech background. A lot of the guys that are most active in the group are tech background, so we have strong bona fides to speak on subjects like this, and it's not. It's just not in the right spot that we think that these should be advancing the way they are. Okay, it's time to get to the stream. It is a long hearing, and there's a lot to delve into. So let's get started.
All right. The committee will come to order. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to address our guests in the audience. Thank you for being here. We appreciate everybody being here. We think engaged citizens are welcomed, and you are a very valuable part of our process, so appreciate it. But I do want to remind our guests in the audience that the chair is obligated under the rules of the House and the rules of the committee to maintain order and preserve decorum in the committee room. I know that we all have deep feelings on these issues, that we all may not agree on everything, but I ask that we all abide by these rules and be respectful of our audience members, our viewers, and our witnesses. The chair appreciates the audience's cooperation in maintaining order as we have a full discussion of these issues. So the chair will now I'll recognize myself for our opening statement, 5 minutes. As people, as a committee, and as a Congress, there are few things that are more essential than our responsibility to protect our children. Today, the harms kids face online are complex, they are immense, and they're constantly changing. In August of 2025, the ranking member and I sat down and made a commitment to try to deliver a bipartisan package to empower parents and to protect children and teens online. We both recognize the gravity of the issue. We both recognize that parents across this country are asking for action. Since that time, the bipartisan committee staff has spent more than 40 hours directly negotiating these bills and countless more working with members on this committee, stakeholders, and each other to build consensus. Dozens of hours of negotiation, drafts, red lines, counterproposals, serious engagement, and good faith efforts. And I'm disappointed that despite all that work, we're ultimately unable to reach a bipartisan agreement. This committee has a long history of working across the aisle on issues affecting children and families. In the past, we have shown that when the stakes are high enough, we can put politics aside and work together. And that is why it is unfortunate that the slate of bills today before us is not bipartisan. But at the end of the day, members of Congress,
Right.
our
That's an important
responsibilities
point.
to our
Important point.
constituents, especially our children. Across the country, children are being targeted, groomed, harassed, and exploited online. Algorithms
That's a
amplify
fact.
addictive, harmful content. Predators exploit anonymity, and parents are left trying to navigate a digital world that evolves faster than the safeguards they have at their disposal.
Yeah.
Every
So
month
social
we go
media
on,
is pretty dismal.
More families experience
dismal.
the kind of devastation that no parent should ever endure. We worked hard to try to make these bills bipartisan. We meant it when we said we wanted to get there. But the absence of a bipartisan consensus cannot be an excuse for inaction. We hoped to do this with our Democrat colleagues, but if we cannot do it together, we still must move forward, and the time is now. We're taking the meaningful steps forward to empower parents and protect children and teens online. We owe it to parents. We owe it to communities, and most importantly, we owe it to the kids who are counting on us to get this right. Today, we will also mark up 5 bills from the Energy Subcommittee, which will help ensure.
Yeah, I'm going to jump out with that. It's not, although they're, the focus point of this is for that, right? This is what they're all talking about. This is the rhetoric. What the measures being proposed are not just affecting children, right? They're actually there for every adult person. We're talking about online ID, and this is kind of the big issue. You're going to hear comparisons to showing your ID at a corner store to buy like beer or something. It's not really what we're talking about here. We're talking about an ID for the whole internet where your identity is tied to it for potentially forever. So that characterization, I'm going to push back on that. Not quite.
The physical and cybersecurity of one of America's greatest forms of infrastructure, our electric grid. As more and more of our lives become digital, the physical and cybersecurity threats to our grid grow in frequency and impact, particularly from adverse nation states. These bipartisan cybersecurity bills will help combat those threats by strengthening DOE's leadership when it comes to securing the energy sector, providing targeted funding and technical assistance to rural and municipal utilities, and authorizing public-private partnerships on grid security to enhance information sharing. I appreciate the willingness of the Ranking Member Pallone and Ranking Member Kasser to work with us on these important bills and look forward to moving them forward together. Thank you, and I now yield to the Ranking Member of the full committee, my good friend, Mr. Pallone, the gentleman from New Jersey. Recognized for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everyone in this room shares the important goal of protecting our nation's kids as they navigate the online world. And over the past several months, I have engaged in aggressive bipartisan talks with Chairman Guthrie and his staff to address the risks children and teens face as they live increasingly digital-centered lives. And I'm disappointed that we were not able to come to bipartisan agreement on the bills before us today. Unfortunately, committee Republicans have chosen to move forward with a set of partisan bills that simply do not meet the mark for kids' safety, and if they become law, would leave kids and their parents worse off than they are today, in my opinion. And that's right, I really believe that these bills
I'd
would
say
leave
that's
our
fair.
kids less safe online than they are today. I believe that Republicans are handing big tech a giant gift by walking away from the stronger preemption standards that were previously included in these bills. The new preemption standards are inadequate to allow states to pass stronger laws to do more to protect kids. And this is really important, especially as we consider how quickly technology can evolve with artificial intelligence. Even
Right.
worse, the preemption
Right.
provisions could harm existing efforts to protect kids by holding companies like Meta and Roblox accountable in the courts. Just
Right. This is as something that's been already the law is super behind on. And by super behind on, we're talking the last time that they legislated seriously on anything to do with the internet, like in a way that really affects everyone. In part because of public dialogue and feedback, where a lot of the changes proposed over the years were, for example, SOPA and PIPA 2012, something we could speak more about. The Fight for the Future Foundation, founded by Aaron Schwartz, pushed back successfully on those, supposedly anti-piracy. Another angle there. But just to dive back in, basically, there's a lot of things involved here, obviously. And you're going to say piracy, safety, digital counterfeiting, there's all of that, including deep fakes, AI deep fakes, and all that. It is essential that this be gotten right, because the way that the law works, it doesn't change too quickly. Okay, it doesn't get revised very often. We're talking the 80s and 90s, right? To recap, the last time they seriously looked at this stuff in a way that made sense, which these bills not doing too good on. So yeah, his point is absolutely Mr. Pallone, absolutely right.
last month, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg testified in a landmark trial about social media addiction and harm. And we need to preserve these avenues for justice for kids and parents who have suffered unspeakable harms, including many of the parents in the room with us today. The Republican bills could prevent these avenues from even being open, leaving Meta and other big tech companies unaccountable for the harms that they inflict on our kids. Republicans have also included a giant loophole for big tech with their knowledge standard. The standard allows tech companies and companies that collect kids' data to continue to claim that they lacked actual knowledge or willfully disregarded knowledge that kids are using on their platforms. Republicans are letting big tech off the hook by letting them say they don't know they have kids on their platforms. But nobody really believes that. But Republicans want to let big tech get away with ridiculous claims. With an impossible-to-meet knowledge standard, enforcement becomes extremely difficult. So these bills also threaten kids in unsupportive or even abusive households where there can be real-world harms from allowing parents complete access and control over their teens' online existence. These Republican
It's a fair
bills let
point.
big tech off the
It's
hook.
a fair
They stop
point. The
progress and protect kids.
law is supposed to protect everyone, and the role of government is something of an umpire in that usually, right? And so parental rights are super important, right? Parental knowledge and guidance and control over the online experience as their children grow up. That's something that's actually crucial. But at the end of the day, the government is there to protect everyone's rights. It needs to accommodate parental rights, children's rights, and also the rights of innovators, right? These big tech companies to develop these things for us, which a lot of us do like, even if they're not all that great. Social media is, I'm going to call out, but yeah, this is something. It's nothing to rush into, and Mr. Pallone, absolutely right.
And they make vulnerable kids less safe, and that's why I can't support them today. Finally, I am disappointed that the slate of bills we are considering today does not include my Don't Sell Kids Data Act, a straightforward bill that would have banned data brokers from profiting off of kids' data. And while I cannot support these bills today, I hope we can continue to work, as the chairman has suggested, to improve all of the bills so that they actually protect kids. And I'm committed to this issue, as I've always been, but we have to get it right. Our kids depend on it. We'll also be marking up
100%.
5 bipartisan energy cybersecurity bills on the agenda today. We're facing unprecedented challenges to the reliability of our power grid. The bills we're marking up help us address some of the cybersecurity concerns that we're currently facing. And while there's still more work to be done, I'm encouraged to see bipartisan interest in moving these policies forward. 3 of the bills amend or reauthorize important programs that were established in the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're also marking up legislation that ensures the Department of Energy has the authorities it needs to enhance energy security. The Department of Energy and Secretary Wright have a lot to prove to us when it comes to protecting our energy security. The Trump administration has spent its efforts canceling much-needed investments in our power grid, even as our need for more reliable energy only grows. And this cannot continue. One of the programs we're reauthorizing today had millions in funding for rural electric cooperatives and municipal utilities that were held up for countless months due to senseless delays at Trump's Department of Energy. If we want the programs we're reauthorizing today to succeed, we have to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back, and the chair will remind members that pursuant to the committee rules, all members' opening statements will be made part of the record. Are there further opening statements? Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I'm pleased that today's markup has the 5 bipartisan energy security bills to address cyber and physical threats to our nation's energy infrastructure. Throughout the 119th Congress, the Energy Subcommittee has spent considerable time examining the evolving threat landscape facing our energy system. American families and businesses rely on secure, reliable, and affordable energy supplies in their everyday lives. The legislation before us today will protect our nation's critical infrastructure by ensuring government and private sector partners are equipped with the resources and authorities needed to identify, assess, and address attacks on our energy infrastructure. The interconnected nature of our energy system requires constant intelligence sharing, clear visibility into threat landscapes, and sufficient resources to fill gaps in security protections, particularly for rural and small utility service territories. Our bipartisan legislation seeks to do just that. H.R. 7272, the Pipeline Cybersecurity Preparedness Act, and H.R. 7258, the Energy Emergency Leadership Act, rightly enhance the Department of Energy's existing role in physical and cyber threat protection as a sector risk management agency for the energy industry. In addition, H.R. 7305.
So they're considering multiple issues. I'm going to grab a water here. Basically, this is the Energy Committee, which is another kind of issue. They're putting all of these different, like anti-piracy, child safety, online counterfeiting and fraud, and AI deepfake, and all of this under this committee and in these same bills. And it's a mess. It's a mess. So I'm going to grab water. I'll be like 2 seconds.
The Energy Threat Analysis Center Act, and H.R. 7266, the Rural and Municipal Utility Cybersecurity Act, aid information sharing efforts for threat detection and equip small and rural operators with the necessary resources to protect their systems. H.R. 7257, the Secure Grid Act, which I sponsor with the gentlelady from California.
I'm going to skip ahead on this.
Facing states, the country, and will ensure a more secure.
Important issues, but like these all deserve their own consideration and hearing, quite frankly. In my take, yeah.
Committee staffs for all their hard work on getting these bills to us today. Urge my colleagues to support these important bills, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back, and I'll just go in order. So the gentlelady from New York is recognized for an opening statement for 3 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairman Guthrie and Ranking Member Pallone. I'll get right to it. This committee sounds like a broken record. Month after month and year after year, Republicans have used this committee as a means to give more handouts to tech oligarchs under the guise of keeping kids safe online.
This is Ms. Clark from New York. Very good comments. I already listened a little bit earlier.
Today's no different as we prepare to discuss the same half-baked bills. In our subcommittee markup in December, we agreed that we all wanted to see changes to these bills. Apparently, 3 months was not enough time to reach any sort of consensus, let alone common sense.
Right. This has been a rush
Republicans have gone as
process.
far as to create a partisan Frankenstein package made of their bad ideas, falsely labeled as kids' internet safety. Some of the bills before this committee today are ripe with contradictions, vague enforcement mechanisms, and directly undermine state authority. As I've said many times in this room, without a comprehensive federal standard, existing state laws are the only legislation keeping kids safe online right now.
It's a
These
very
bills
fair
will
point.
make way for bad actors to data mine, or in other words, sell, license, rent, trade, transfer, release, disclose, or provide access to personal data. Let me spell it out for you. When a data miner gets the personal information of a child or a teen, they profit on them for life.
Correct. Data privacy is something we fully are in support of. It's fundamental to online experience and the internet. And frankly, where kids are concerned in gaming, that really shouldn't be monetizable or marketable. At least in my view, we don't have an overall stance on it, other than we are in favor of more data privacy protections for everyone, and kids particularly would benefit from that. So, very good point.
The best solution to protect kids online is a federal data privacy standard that we can build off and include additional protection for children and teens. Until my colleagues on the other side of the aisle decide to take this seriously and stop lining the pockets of big tech and data miners, no one will actually be safe online. Let's go back to the drawing board, work in a bipartisan manner to create clear preemption definitions, and create a package that actually keeps children safe. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the
I agree
gentleman
with
from
Ms.
Florida
Clark.
for 3 minutes for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to thank the chairman for working with me and stakeholders on all these child protection bills since the subcommittee markup. The KIDS Act is the most comprehensive kids online safety package this committee has ever advanced.
Right.
This is the culmination of years of
Comprehensive, but
evidence
just jam-packed.
gathering,
It's not
heartfelt
really,
testimony,
not too
and the
specific.
social media questioning this committee led under several chairs in the past. We heard stories of kids engaging in drug sales and dying of overdoses with the help of apps that enable disappearing messages. The KIDS Act does that, and I want to thank the parents as well for their input. There's no question. We heard stories of kids being groomed by strangers through gaming apps and consoles. The KIDS Act
that is the thing that's
addresses
happened.
that, ladies and gentlemen. We heard stories of chatbots
Also happened offline. Important to
encouraging
realize.
and facilitating suicides in kids. The KIDS Act, sponsored by the chairman, addresses that. We've come a long way, ladies and gentlemen. We work together in a bipartisan fashion. Specifically, I want to talk about my bill, the Kids Online Safety Act, which is now in Title II of the KIDS Act. This bill creates significant safeguards for minors that limit known threats. This includes limitations on the ability of strangers to engage with minors online. It limits design features that cause compulsive use and addiction to social media platforms.
Right.
It restricts geolocation of minors.
In particular, the algorithms, right? The way that social media works, it's pretty sad. Everyone knows that, and that's a very important point. That's Mr. Bill Rackus of Florida.
That are being used by groomers to meet and abuse their victims, as well as facilitate narcotic drug sales. Most importantly, KOSA turns off algorithms by default for our kids.
Right.
So very important. Again, the input from the parents.
It's a little easier said than done though, because the entire social network system is based on algorithms. So it's like saying, you know, it's not a very it's a very broad way of approaching it. There's a lot of these businesses that without some form of algorithm, there's no business, right? And no social media. So they could be revised and refined and different, maybe for kids and adults, but just banning algorithms or something, it's like saying it's like banning math. You know, it's not a good idea. Doesn't make sense.
Difference. We all see it in our own devices. Every one of us are constantly fed recommended videos based on an individual history on platform or across platforms. Now, imagine you are a teen child that enjoys UFC videos, or a boy or a girl, or a teen girl or boy who watches a video on healthy eating. Of course, there's nothing wrong with this. But we've all heard the stories in a matter of days. Kids can be sucked into an algorithm that twists these innocent views,
Not just kids.
promoting violence or drug use.
Plenty of adults
or
that
self-harm or eating disorders.
scroll too much.
KOSA puts an
Guilty.
end to this spiral. We have a great package here, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to go a long way to protecting kids and reducing the online harms we have all seen. So again, I thank the chairman for creating this package of bills, which combined will mitigate many of the harms we have all seen in our districts. I'm proud of the work we've done, and it's long past time to move these bills to the full House.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky, for 3 minutes for opening statement.
I want to thank the parents and families that are here today. And the message that I have heard is that this legislation is not what we have been looking for. We want something better, stronger, something that is really relevant to the children that have been lost. We can do better. And so I think many of my colleagues
Yeah, they can do
on
better,
this side of the aisle
for sure.
believe that we can and better do better. We need to work with families, hear their voices, hear what happened, and we need to stop it. And we don't have to slim down. We can get something that is going to be strong enough to make sure that these people who are here today thinking about their children that did not make it, and asking us to do better, to be stronger, to be smarter. I think we can do this. I know that we can do this. We've had conversations about it, and I am looking forward to the real bill that needs to make sure that it
Think of the children.
accounts for the people.
Not wrong,
who
but
have
yeah,
had
this bill
the
is.
worst
These bills do not do
thing in
that.
life happen to them, to lose their precious children. We can do better, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair, any member of the Republican side seeking recognition for opening statement? The chair will recognize the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Castor, for 3 minutes for opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For years, the Energy and Commerce Committee has examined the profound harms of the social media platforms inflict on children and the malign design choices that big tech companies use to maximize engagement and profit at kids' expense.
So this is Miss Castor from Florida. She said something very important right there. Very important. Malign design choices. What does that mean? It bad design in essence. Okay, it's design that's it's clickbait centric. It's rage bait, kind of hate bait. Things that just they do get people to click and watch and look and engage. You want to comment and oh you're so wrong and someone is wrong on the internet. And I'm just gonna say going back, I've been on the internet since pretty much since there was an internet. It's not that long ago, but yeah, rage bait was, trolling. That's just a thing people did, right? Individuals, right? There is trolling, and certainly, flame wars and disagreements. Everyone, it's some point of disagreement. But online, if someone's wrong on the internet, yeah, you're probably going to go and like follow that up to the nth degree, if you're into that. And what's happened is the design choices around these algos have taken that incentive, right? And they're basically forcing that to the front. They're forcing everyone into that paradigm. Yes, it does get people engaged. It gets people enraged. And that is a malign choice. That is a malign decision in terms of its overall effect. So it's a super important point. It's not just something, it's a bad outcome. People feel bad after engaging on social media. Some of this is by design, all right? And that stuff has to be looked at. It has to be addressed. That's a social science issue and a social health issue. So a very important point.
Through hearings, investigations, whistleblower testimony, and the voices of families across that children are on their platforms, even though these companies design their products to attract young users and profit from their presence. Instead of raising standards for children's safety, these bills would lower them. Instead of empowering states to protect kids, they would tie the states' hands. And instead of holding big tech accountable, they would shield companies and corporations from responsibility. We know this. In 2021, Frances Haugen came before Congress and she testified that Meta built a business model that prioritizes profit over the safety of its users. Her testimony echoed the tactics of the tobacco industry decades ago. Deny the harm, obscure the evidence, and protect the business model at all costs.
Yeah.
Well, we've learned
Real
since
thing to
then,
happen. Yep.
Surgeon General reports, John Haight's best-selling book. We know this. So why are Republicans catering to the big tech companies instead of truly getting back to the bipartisan strong versions of kids' online safety and privacy bills that we hammered out together in the last Congress? I think you only have to look at what this Congress has done. The big tech companies had a front row seat at the inauguration. They were able to pass an AI moratorium. This is not the time to turn your back on kids. And people across America are aware of this. We're not going to stand for weaker bills that put our kids' safety and privacy at risk. And I want to thank the parents who are here. You have been our North Star in working for, as Ms. Schakowsky said, so much better. You deserve so much better, and we're going to fight for you every step of the way. I yield back my time.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. The chair will recognize the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Harshberger, for 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to express my gratitude to Chair Guthrie for his leadership. I've heard from countless parents who've been fighting to protect their children and teens from harm online. The Kids Act will save lives. I'm a mother, but not only am I a mother, I'm a grandmother with children who are the age who have access to these online evils. So what this committee's doing today, we're fighting for what's right. We need to pass this bill to empower parents and protect American families. I want to highlight Title I of the Kids Act. This provision includes language from the SCREEN Act, which my colleague and very good friend Mary Miller introduced earlier this Congress, and which I'm proud to help lead. Point blank, kids should not be looking at pornography. This is just common sense, people. If you want to operate an adult website, you need to make sure minors are not using it. I also want to add that it is constitutional, too. There's some groups out there who suggest it's unconstitutional. Personally, I don't believe this is their real concern. We've been hearing from a lot of folks who profit off doing harm to kids or have questionable ideologic priorities. But for those who are worried, you should not be. Last summer, the Supreme Court ruled on this very issue. In Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in favor of Texas upholding the constitutionality of the state law requiring age verification for adult websites. This bill uses the same language and thresholds.
Right, right. This is that is a very important point. So this is Mrs. Harshbarger of Tennessee. She raises an important point. Porn is it is pretty readily available online. Okay, lots of people encounter it, sometimes without intending to, and there are definite technical and legal safeguards that can help avoid that and minimize exposure and access for people that don't want to see that, and young people which really shouldn't see that. That's a feasible thing. It is a possible thing, but the law again is very far behind in even approaching this in a very realistic way. They did something that was very much they took a very bold stance in Texas and a few other states where they started requiring porn sites to verify ID, which is on its face itself, that's not unreasonable. That actually, that does make sense in that context. The same as if you're ordering wine online or something, right, or cigarette supplies or cigarettes. Well, okay, yeah, then that's a situation where it can make sense to get carded, right, where you should have to show an ID. When we're talking about just to get online, though, when we're talking about just to access social networks per se, which it's a little more thorny there, right? A little bit more of depends on the social network and stuff and what content is there. But at the end of the day, what these measures do, what the bills actually do, the language here, it's not just about kids and about porn, right? That's a red herring. That's actually like a misleading talking point ultimately, because what the end result of these bills is everyone, adults, for pretty much everything, shopping, access to information online, all of that, you're going to be showing an ID, and your identity will be tracked along with whatever you do online. So I mean, it's a little bit of, and I'm not saying this is particularly what this congressperson's position is, but it looks like a bait and switch situation to many people on account of that, and its implications are far, far broader. So yes, on that narrow point, yeah, kids and porn there should be a firewall there, a little separation, maybe ID, but that's not really what's being proposed here. It's ID for everything, for everyone, pretty much always, and that's a whole different situation. Plus, you show ID in person, you just showed it. You walk away, right? This is not that. This is identity and information collection and tracking, potentially lifelong. So yeah, really good cause on that one point, and really not the right solution overall.
24 other states have similar laws in place. So I strongly encourage all my colleagues to support this provision and the KIDS Act overall, because this cannot wait. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back, and the chair will recognize the gentlelady from Michigan for 3 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Privacy is a fundamental right, and when it comes to our kids, that responsibility is even greater. And I just have to say, I'm really deeply disappointed that we're here again today. We're considering a partisan package that falls short of what our families across this country are demanding and what our children need. I'm looking at the parents and their pictures of their children, and I've gotten to know some of them, and I know other families with children that have committed suicide or done other awful things because I'm going to start to cry. We've got to do something. We keep talking and talking and talking about protecting kids
I'm just going to
online.
jump out here.
We've held hearings.
We've got to do something. Think of the children. Think of we've got to just do anything, pass anything, because think of it's kind of emotional. This is heartstrings. So I'm not going to read into her intention if it's, emotional manipulation, but the contents of the bill doesn't, it's way beyond what she's referring to, so.
And markups, and we've introduced bills, and yet time and time again, These efforts collapse into partisan exercises that lead nowhere. And meanwhile, our children are exposed to harmful content, their data is harvested, and they're left without meaningful protections. We need, and we've been trying to work on bipartisan solutions, but instead of building consensus, my colleagues, I love you, but we're jamming through a package that prioritizes the industry over accountability, that prioritizes industry over our kids. I know how you feel. I lost somebody to suicide, and no one can understand until you've been where you all are.
It's kind of a fair point.
And that's just
That's a
not
fair
how
point.
this committee has historically operated, and it's not how we should be operating. I'm concerned that this package includes sweeping preemption. As technology evolves and new harms emerge, we must continue to step up to protect children. We've got to set a strong federal floor. What makes me even more frustrated is that common sense bipartisan bills, like my No Fentanyl on Social Media Act, which directs federal agencies to examine how traffickers target minors online and develop concrete recommendations to protect kids, are being wrapped into a broader partisan package that undermines meaningful privacy protections.
Right.
Unfortunately, and I hate to say,
There's just too much in these bills, and there are too many cross purposes. And frankly, you heard from one of the other Congress people, like 3 months to like look into it and amend it and debate it. That's too. This is a rush to try to handle everything everywhere all at once, and that's not how law and government and forgetting all of that, right? Just setting that to one side. That's not how technology works, right? There is science and engineering and procedure that goes into making technology work for everyone and making sure it works consistently and safely for everyone. That's not how this isn't typically how law is done, and this is almost never how technology is responsibly handled. So she makes a fair point, and it's also the urgency of it. It's urgent, but it's urgent to do it right, not just do something. So kind of half of a point there.
I say this because I love my friends, but this package is privacy in name only, and it fails to create real, enforceable standards that truly put children and families first. We can't continue to cede our leadership on privacy. We can't keep passing partisan measures while the digital world grows more and more complex for our kids. The American people expect us to work together and get this right. We all need to stand up for our families and for our young people. I'm going to have to vote against this package because it's not strong enough, but I hope we can all work together to actually deliver strong privacy protections our children deserve.
Right.
Thank you.
It does come
Gentlelady
down to
yields
privacy
back.
in a
Is
lot
there
of
further
cases.
opening statements on the
Privacy and
Republican side? Any
safety.
on the Democrat side? Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 3 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. I'd like to concur with some of the statements that have been issued today. And I want to, of course, just put my heart out to all of the families of our victims and survivors that are here in the audience today. This bill, unfortunately, is a lot of some of the most cynical ways that Washington works.
This is AOC.
Which is that we center, or at the top of this bill, we will talk about kids, and we'll say that things are under the guise of the safety of children. But then when you actually open the hood and look at what's under there, it's being used as a smokescreen for everything that big tech lobbyists want. And what big tech lobbyists want is a national surveillance program where they can harvest the private and personal data of every American with zero actual protections for people and their privacy and victims of some of the most heinous crimes that we've seen in America.
AOC's got
We
it.
don't have to just talk about this as though this is a theoretical issue. Just a couple of months ago, Discord, a platform where a lot of kids have been targeted and put in danger, mind you, tried to roll out this idea of a data verification or an age verification technique. But they did it in this way that was also very emblematic of what we're against here today. They contracted out to a third-party private company to do facial scanning of not just kids, but also adults.
Everyone,
And then
potentially, but
mind
practically.
you, Discord has over 200 million users every month.
Right.
They decided to launch a teen default setting where they will lock you into a quote unquote, what they call a teen appropriate experience, which means you can't access certain content. Which, mind you, if you are an adult that does not opt in, you then get cordoned off into the teen experience. Explain to me how that has anything to do with children's safety.
Right.
And then, if the only way to get out of that censored version is by scanning your face, but what's more shocking is that Discord made the decision to move forward with this after they had been hacked and at least 70,000 users had their data stolen.
Right.
So I don't see, even
Right.
on the other side of this, kids were not protected, but a lot of people's privacy was violated.
Right. Right.
And I want to,
People were harmed in the name of protecting kids, right? Like materially, that's just one data breach. There's actually billions of names out there now based on data breaches, in part because of stuff like this that started. Some measures like this began in Australia, social media ban for under 16. Very similar stuff. And yeah, this is not well thought out at all.
once again, express my heartfelt just condolences to all of the advocates here. And I do believe that we can both protect American safety and protect kids. This package, unfortunately, does not do that. And we want to get to a place where we, of course, protect victims and ensure the privacy of every American is honored
Right.
as well. Thank you,
Right.
and I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady.
Everything
back.
AOC
Member
said, basically, I agree
Republican
with.
side, seeing none. Dr. Ruiz is, Mr. Auchincloss, you're recognized for 3 minutes for an opening statement. Do you have an opening?
Thank you, Chairman. A little bit more than a year ago, the president held a Meta inauguration where Mr. Zuckerberg was front and center, demonstrating to Americans exactly where this president's priorities were going to lie. Since then, Meta and others have helped renovate the East Wing of the White House and built data centers in Louisiana. And now they're getting their reward, which is a Meta markup. And that's exactly what today is. Because what this bill does, to double down on what the Congresswoman from New York just said, is this markup is a vehicle for a false flag operation by Meta, where they put at the front of these bills all these nice-sounding ideas, and then they tuck in two things, an actual knowledge standard and preemption, that nullifies everything that came before it. This is a blank check to big tech, and Democrats are going to stand against it. The reason Meta wants this so badly is because Mr. Zuckerberg doesn't like what's happening right now. He's actually having to answer to a jury of his peers about the treatment of young people online. And he's finding some pretty disturbing things. A third of all 10 to 12-year-olds in America are using Instagram, for example, despite the fact that Meta claims that that should be impossible. They're finding out that their chatbots are allowed to hold sensual conversations with young people. We're finding out that Meta suppressed research on child safety.
He
Finding out that
he does raise a very important all around these are important points. I'm just going to say the fact that some young people are on those platforms, that's an issue. But when it comes down to it, the putting everyone in a system where all the data is tracked and all that online may actually exacerbate what was already a problematic situation. So it's an important point.
And externally, they downplayed the risks to child safety, despite knowing internally that their young users were suffering online. Mr. Zuckerberg wants it to stop. And so he comes to congressional Republicans, and they make it stop for him. And the opportunity cost there is that the litigation that can bring justice for these parents, for these children, will be halted in its tracks. In my own district in Massachusetts, the town of Brookline has joined a class action suit that seeks to hold Meta and others accountable for treating our children like products whose attention spans can be monetized, whose sense of self and society can be corroded. This lawsuit would never have been possible had this law that we are marking up today been in effect. And we must prevent this false flag operation
Excellent
from
point.
succeeding. I yield back.
Excellent point.
Jim, on
Yeah.
yields back, is there further?
When people are treated as products and you aren't given a personal bill of rights, basically, and like if you're productized and they didn't fully advise you of that. I mean everyone kind of knows, right, at this point, but if you are the product there and it's advertising and things like that, that's going to be a hairy situation from the go. It's like that's especially, and then you have children as products in that. Basically, there was actually regulations on television to prevent like advertising to children and stuff for many years, and they're still in the books, the law, but it's been changed around, and this stuff is not really handled well. And another point I'm going to raise is nobody so far really has talked. They've talked about parents as victims, and they're victimized by some of these trends as well. But where are the parents? Right? Where actually are the parents in looking after their kids on the social media? Where are the parents in actually gatekeeping like a parent should? Stuff that's potentially harmful or guiding their kids, to be safe and stay away from that. Not a lot heard about that, and that's more fundamental. That's crucial because, again, speaking from a tech standpoint, you can design like a perfect system, maybe more or less, right? You could design a really good system, but without cooperation from the people that are using it, without people actually being knowledgeable and caring about who's being affected, who's involved, there's no substitute for that. There's no substitute for that. You can't just design a perfect matrix and whatever and expect that's going to one size fits all. Especially where people that are vulnerable or maybe not knowledgeable are involved. So that's something that we haven't heard so far, and that's like that's fundamental actually. So yeah.
Opening statements on the Republican side, seeing none on the Democrat side. Seeing none, before we pull up the first bill, I'd like to take a point of personal privilege to recognize a valuable member of our team who is leaving us, Ms. Kanamati. Today is the last committee activity for our Deputy Staff Director, Sophie Kanamati.
Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead a little.
Instrumental in my becoming chair has been an integral part of all. Mom welcomes a publisher, and I'm excited for her and her family as service to this committee.
All right.
You're the best. So now we'll go back to legislative business. The chair calls up H.R. 757 and asks the clerk to report.
H.R. 7757, a bill to protect children and teens online, empower parents, and strengthen families, and for other purposes, be it enacted by the
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the bill will be open for amendment at any point so ordered, and I will recognize myself for 5 minutes to speak on the bill. As we see here today, childhood is being reshaped in real time by the digital world, and often in ways detrimental to American families, and parents feel it. We see you here. Kids are living it, and Congress has a responsibility to act. That is exactly what the Kids Internet Digital Safety Act does. The KIDS Act is the most serious, comprehensive piece of legislation to address online safety to date. There is no one-size-fits-all fix that can help American families navigate the challenges they face in today's digital childhood. No single policy that can empower parents or fully remove every threat from the internet. That is precisely why this bill takes a wide-ranging approach. This bill brings together a dozen...
The really important thing to understand is parental controls already exist in almost every device and every platform, and like every operating system, and even cable companies. This is going back to the 90s, right? Cable companies and TV manufacturers, there's something called a V-chip. Okay, these tools are in people's hands. The fact is, public education is lacking. Parents don't, in some cases, know that they have it. They don't necessarily know how to use it. They don't know, maybe, people generally don't get trained to be parents, so they don't know maybe that they should, even though it should be obvious and common sense. That may just not happen. These are things that probably should even come up in school or at the college level at some point, because these are a reality. And maybe it's worth going to a parenting course, right? There are actually things you could do to help empower yourself and maybe be better prepared or be a better parent. And that's actually a responsibility on the parents. What he said is true. No one size fits all, but like this is all important. And yeah, these bills are just kind of like one of the other Congress women said, is like, let's just do something. And they have everything jammed in there. Not the right approach.
Impactful proposals into one unified package. These measures are powerful on their own, but exponentially stronger together. This is the broadest online safety proposal for children and teens ever considered by Congress.
Right.
The KIDS Act,
That's precisely the problem.
contrary to what you've heard, sets safety data as the default. Platforms must maximize protection for children and teens, including safeguards against obscene and restricted products, unsafe communication.
Right. That is fully important and true. The fact is, a lot of the tools are, especially when it comes to like social media platforms specifically, they're kind of they're arcane. They're not easy to use. So even if your device has good parental control options, and even if there are certain tools, when it gets to the platforms themselves, they don't want to give you a huge control panel and a buffet of there are some, right? Like Apple has done some good work. I think Insta also did a more comprehensive control option, but a lot of the platforms don't really give you very fine, granular controls. And it's a fair point. It's a fair point. It should be easy to use, and it should be more uniform than it is. There's certain like minimums that they should offer. So it's a fair point.
It bans targeted advertising and market research on children and teens by requiring the strongest privacy settings by default, in establishing strict privacy and security standards.
What that means is one size fits all for children unless you prove yourself otherwise.
The bill mandates annual third-party
Bad
audits,
solution.
reporting mechanisms, and robust enforcement by the Federal Trade Commission and states' attorneys general, resulting in the strongest enforcement regime proposed by Congress in any online safety legislation. I want to thank to all the members, both.
So this is chairman of the Energy Committee, specifying that these bills are going to be enforced by the Federal Trade Commission, right, a commerce body at the federal level, and the top level lawyers, attorney general at the state level. That's a very top-down approach. It's a very removed top-down approach that really, he's talking about empowering parents. I'm trying to see where that connects. It really doesn't under this legislation.
On and off this committee for your contributions, dedication, and commitment to putting forward the strongest approach to protecting kids online that Congress has ever seen. The KIDS Act reflects all of our work, and we should be proud of it. This bill should be bipartisan. This bill includes a dozen separate bills, nearly all of which are bipartisan. During negotiations, we accepted dozens of edits from the minority, and those edits are reflected in the bill before us. Protecting kids and empowering parents is not a partisan issue, and this bill largely reflects the universal policies we had a bipartisan agreement on. Urge all 54 of us in this room to support this bill. This isn't a moment for politics. It's a moment to govern, and children across our nation deserve it. I yield back. Does anyone seek to recognize on the bill? The gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word. Members, I'd like to shine the light on one of the most consequential ways that House Republicans have bowed to the big tech companies and social media companies, and that's the elimination of the duty of care in the design of their products. There is no duty of care in this bill. A duty of care is a simple idea, but it carries enormous weight when we're talking about children's safety online. At its core, it's the basic expectation that companies should not design products in ways that put people, especially children, at risk, at unnecessary and foreseeable risk. We already apply this expectation to toys, to playgrounds, to cars, and so many other products that children use every day. A duty of care simply brings the same common sense standard into the digital world. In plain language, a duty of care means that if a company knows or should know that its product could harm people, it must take reasonable steps to prevent that harm. It doesn't demand perfection. It doesn't stifle innovation. It simply says, if you build a system that millions of children use, you must think about their safety when you design it. And that matters because social media platforms are not passive tools. They are engineered intentionally. They are built around algorithms, engagement loops, and data collection systems that shape what children see, how long they stay online, and who can reach them. These design choices are powerful, and they can create predictable risks. Features like infinite scroll, autoplay, and algorithmic recommendations keep kids online far longer than is healthy. And children cannot fully understand or manage these risks. They don't have the developmental capacity to navigate complex data practices, targeted content, or manipulative design. Our existing laws are not built for practice risks. They don't have the developmental capacity to navigate complex data practices, targeted content, or manipulative design. Our existing laws are not built for algorithmic systems. Traditional consumer protection frameworks don't address the way digital platforms collect data or shape behavior.
Fair points.
A duty of care fills that gap. It requires companies to consider the real-world impact of their systems on young users and to take reasonable steps to reduce foreseeable harm in the way they're designed.
Right. So this is actually, it's extremely significant. Ms. Castor of Florida comes to present this point that duty of care, like basically you're responsible for the outcomes that your product that productizes people, has on people, mental health and whatever. It's very similar. We've seen with tobacco, it's pretty obvious, right? It's actually scientifically, you don't even have to, it's been proven, right? There's no real dispute there. The deleterious effect that can have. Smoking in particular, right, per se, that's one. And there was in the 90s, that was the huge thing. And actually in the early 2000s, because before that, companies actually would say cigarettes were healthy. Legitimately, they said smoking makes, it's makes you more active and takes away negative health outcomes. It was crazy, actually. They straight up lied for decades, and misrepresented their product. So everyone knows smoking is harmful now, but there was a point in time where it was represented as in fact healthy, right? And there's a money incentive there too. Tobacco is very big, and that's, I'm speaking from a personal point of view, but again, there's not a lot of dispute here in terms of the scientific basis and all. That was something that the federal government stepped up on after a series of lawsuits and scientific findings came out that showed that was indisputably the case. Something similar, maybe. And certainly should be, certain investigations should be had, and science definitely should be done on what these systems are doing and the effects they're having. The question is that the burden, is that the responsibility of social media companies, of tech companies? Should tech companies be put in a role where they're obligated to answer for the psychological outcomes, right? And the health outcomes of exposure to their product? And unlike something like tobacco, that's very mixed. It's very mixed, and it's much more dynamic, right? One is physical and one is psychological. There's a lot more complexity. There's a lot more nuance there, and it's a newer area of science. This, as a technology, is a newer area of technology. So asking the companies to take on that burden is it's a little bit of a stretch. It's a little sus. So is, frankly, the way social media is affecting people is definitely not great in a number of cases, right? No one really disputes that, but it's a complex topic, and the idea that there should be a so-called duty of care that the social media companies themselves tech firms should be obligated or are the best party to, fund or facilitate that research. That's a big question. That's a big question. And more science indisputably needs to be done on it. But I don't think the duty of care is especially well indicated as it's being proposed to be put on the tech companies. They play a role, right? They actually absolutely should cooperate in making a good scientific outcome, healthier for people. But it's kind of weird implementation. So the proposal as it's slated is it may not really, it's maybe having the fox guard the hen house a little bit. That's one way of seeing it. And yeah, it may just not be the best approach overall.
And for lawmakers, duty of care provides a clear and workable standard. It defines what reasonable precautions look like in the digital world. It creates accountability when companies ignore known risks. It encourages platforms to assess harms before launching new features. And it gives states and regulators a benchmark for enforcement while helping courts.
That just on that point, that's maybe a bit like, doing research on whether people are gonna, like or think that like a TV show sucks or something before it comes out. Some of this is just so pie in the sky, it's not even clear that the legislators are trying to pull a rabbit out of a hat with some of this, in my opinion.
Evaluate whether a company has acted responsibly. It simply establishes a baseline obligation. If a platform knows that a system can harm children, it must act to reduce that harm. And in practice, a duty of care can lead to meaningful improvements. It can push companies to reduce exposure to harmful designs, to limit contact between minors and unknown adults, to avoid addictive features targeted at children, to strengthen privacy protections, and to respond more quickly when harmful patterns emerge. These are the kind of protections families often assume already exist, but they do not. A duty of care helps ensure that when children go online, the companies that built those platforms have taken reasonable steps to keep them safe. It aligns the digital world with the expectations we already have in other parts of children's lives, that the adults in charge take responsibility for preventing foreseeable harm.
Right. Which does kind of come back to like, where are the parents in all this? Traditionally, things like this, if you have mass harm from a product, going back a little bit to the tobacco and stuff, or other things like playground equipment or something, a lot of that has been addressed with lawsuits, class action lawsuits. Now, I'm not going to comment up or down in terms of whether that's the best way to do it, but that is more traditional. And also, the duty of care fundamentally, realistically, it should rest with the parents. They're your kids, right? You have children. The duty of care first and foremost should be with the parents, and broader authorities, the actual social scientists, social workers, whatever. It's a weird flex trying to approach it this way, in my opinion.
So regret that you have weakened the standard and bowed to the big tech companies at the expense of our children. And this was one of the most consequential ways that you did that. I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Indiana for 5 minutes to speak on the bill.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady's recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Guthrie, for bringing the Kids Internet and Digital Safety Act before this committee markup today. I also want to sincerely thank Subcommittee Chairman Bilirakis and your staff for investing in getting this legislation to the point it is today. I want to thank the witnesses, parents, advocates who've shared their stories with me and the expertise they've provided throughout this process. I know that there are concerns that the bill today before us is not perfect. But I do want to note that this is a culmination of a lot of work by this committee to bring meaningful, durable protections to American children online, and our efforts are genuine. To say otherwise is offensive to those of us who have been working on this issue, me personally, for at least the last 3 years. And I want to see us get something done. I applaud my colleagues on the left. I share their perspective on preemption. But I also am very concerned that their focus stops at age 13, when, if you've read John Haight's Anxious Generation, you know that he pushes for a standard of a prohibition for social media under the age of 16. This package will address a wide range of harms: addiction by design features, exposure to dangerous content, exploitation, lack of parental tools, unsafe AI chatbot interactions, and inadequate data privacy. It does create real obligations for platforms, not just voluntary commitments, and it enforces those obligations through the FTC and states' attorneys general. This bill also includes several of my own legislative priorities that I do want to highlight, including the SafeBots Act. We're in the middle of a chatbot revolution. Children are on the front lines. Kids today aren't just scrolling feeds, they're forming emotional bonds with AI companions that simulate empathy, mimic authority figures, and are available at any hour. And in too many cases, those kids don't even know they're talking to software. We saw a tragic illustration of this when a 14-year-old lost his life after months of conversations with a chatbot that validated his most troubling thoughts rather than routing him to real help.
Right.
That can't be the norm.
Right.
The SafeBots Act
That's a
creates
really important
common-sense
point.
baseline guardrails. It prohibits AI from impersonating licensed professionals. It requires age-appropriate disclosure so minors always know they're talking to an AI, not a human.
Right,
Mandates
right,
that
and I mean
platforms-
it's not just minors. I mean there should be AI disclosure, and AI safety is crucial and fundamental. And just rolling this into this kind of safety, that kind of content, these need to be individual bills. Each of these issues deserves individual focus and attention. This is not the way to do it.
Provide a crisis hotline when a minor raises self-harm or suicide. It requires reasonable take-a-break prompts after extended interactions and directs the NIH to study long-term mental health effects of chatbots on minors. This bill also includes the AWARE Act, which takes a foundational step that we should have taken years ago, equipping parents, educators, and children with clear, accessible information about the risks of AI chatbots and dangerous bots. Parents need to understand that when their child pours their heart out to a chatbot, that data may be harvested to train the next generation of AI models.
Right.
They need to know how
Everyone's
to identify
data
a
is
bot,
harvested
how to
that way.
recognize a manipulative or unsafe bot, and where to turn if something goes wrong. The AWARE Act directs the FTC, in consultation with relevant agencies, to produce those resources. It's not another government report. It's actionable guidance targeted to different age groups, delivered in a format that actually reaches families. And I go back again to my mission of having at least an age 16 standard for access to these platforms. Anything less than that creates tremendous loopholes that the tech companies will exploit. These provisions in the broader KIDS Act package represent the kind of comprehensive and durable federal framework that families are hoping for. I know it's not perfect, but the research is clear, the harm is documented, and the technology is not going to slow down. I encourage my colleagues to support the package as we continue to work on this. And Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your leadership, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. The gentleman yields
Yeah,
back.
Miss Hochin, absolutely. She raises an important point. Right on that on its own, just an AI regulation bill, which is kind of what they're tiptoeing around. That's kind of why they're shoehorning in AI with deep fakes, with drugs, with child safety, with poor mental health outcomes, with pornography. Like it's just a cluster F. Okay, this is not how you protect anyone. This is how you just say we did something, and maybe somebody gets protected from this. A lot of people probably won't if you're just putting your ID online. This is AI deserves its own science-based regulatory approach. This is just it's such a lacking way to do it.
Back. Are there any other members?
Fundamentally, I'm going to say also transparency matters more. She discussed two things: accountability and kind of transparency, and bans. Okay, a ban isn't accountability. Okay, a ban isn't necessarily transparency. What you have in a ban scenario is, oh, there are no of this group here. No, there's nothing like that going on there, and that's a ban. Okay, assuming that that holds. Okay, transparency is there is data collected, there is disclosure, and sometimes those things are at odds with one another. So this deserves more thought.
Should be recognized on the bill. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes. Strike the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the parents that are here holding up photos of your sons and daughters. I can see the pain. I see you, and I see your pain, and I want to thank you for being here. I want to be direct. This bill in its current House form raises serious concerns that cannot be ignored. Two issues stand out above all others. One, the lack of a duty of care, and two, the broad preemption of state law. The absence of a duty of care means that platforms are not required to take proactive steps to protect children. Let that sink in for a second. So there's some good, perhaps, changes that they will do, but they're not required. Instead, they can rely on self-regulable policies as standard that has repeatedly failed to prevent harm. And who sets that standard? Themselves. Oh, this is reasonable. They say, and they've been saying this. And they're not held accountable because of that. Without a clear legal obligation, our children remain vulnerable to exploitative practices, manipulative design features, and online harms that are well documented. Equally concerning is the bill's broad preemption of state law. For example, in my state, states like California have already enacted strong protections for children online, including the California Age Appropriate Design Code Act, which establishes robust privacy and safety standards for minors using digital services. This House bill would effectively nullify those protections, stripping states of the authority to maintain or expand safeguards that are already in place. So it will make kids less safe in those states. In other words, this bill in those states will make kids more vulnerable, will hurt kids, will take away protections. What the hell are we doing here? So Congress should set a federal floor for child safety, not erase state laws that are actively protecting kids today. And they're going to say, no, it doesn't preempt state law. Well, this bill says that the only duty platforms have is to write their own rules and policies, and as long as they have their own rule, anything that holds them to a different standard is quote-unquote in conflict with House KOSA. Okay? State laws and state cases hold tech accountable under more protective standards than anything tech will write for themselves, thus the conflict. It also says that actual knowledge is required both for regulation and enforcement. So tech platforms can't be held accountable unless they have actual knowledge or willfully disregard that a child is on their platforms. They're going to say, we willfully did not want to do these harms. We're going to take their word for it. So state laws say that tech platforms can be held accountable if they reasonably should have known that a child was on their platforms. That's not going to be in effect anymore because of this bill. I also, Mr. Chairman, want to ask unanimous consent to submit.
That's Mr. Ruiz of California. I'm gonna agree with the outline of what he's suggesting there. Basically, local oversight and more or less having someone closer by to be able to monitor or intervene in some kind of online, maybe an online game or something. That's not unreasonable. That's not unreasonable. Trying to do this all top down, right, from the federal government, and giving the platforms kind of this broad duty where they're going to speaking to the duty of care, that they're going to have to follow up on it. It's kind of I think it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit on one side or the other. There needs to be, there back in, I mean, going back a ways here, there used to be like in AOL chat rooms, which were the wild, wild west back when AOL even mattered. There used to be like guides, right? So there's actual staffers that would maybe sometimes sit in or monitor a chat, whatever. A lot of these companies have such cost-cutting measures and such a low floor for what they actually are willing to do to commit resources to, ensure quality of service, like actual just quality of service, whether their product is any good, much less are people, being looked after. Yeah, it looks like there's some issues with the stream lagging. So I'm just going to repeat. There's an issue with there needs to be a little more local oversight, right? There's traditionally some more like guides or people that are a little more local to the situation. Going back, just when AOL guides years ago, this is something that's kind of we need to look more in that direction. A lot of these tech platforms have a very low floor for committing staff to, again, quality of service baseline, actually have the product be good product, much less look after people that are using it, much less like that kind of overseeing safety. So yeah, hopefully if I'm lagging, let me know in the chat, because I see some issues with that, but let's continue.
Submit for the record a letter opposing this bill signed by 161 parents whose children have died and 283 parents whose children have suffered severe psychological harm linked to social media, all of whom oppose this legislation. And by the parents nodding their head yes, I'm assuming they're opposing this legislation here. Their voices reflect the real-world consequences of online harms and underscore the urgent need for stronger protections for children. I urge my colleagues to recognize that we cannot prioritize industry convenience over child safety. A stronger duty of care and careful attention to state preemption are essential to ensure this legislation truly protects children, unless all you're doing is introducing a Trojan horse, something that may look like a gift, but in fact is dangerous. Every child deserves robust protections online, no matter where they live or their family's circumstances. Our responsibility is to ensure they have them. Thank you to the parents that are here, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and the chair recognizes Mr. Evans from Colorado for 5 minutes to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Move to strike last word.
Gentleman's recognized to speak on the bill.
I am proud to speak in support of this historic package, the Kids Internet and Digital Safety Act, or KIDS Act. The legislation will deliver the protection that America's children need and empower parents to be sure their kids are being safe online. And I want to thank the chairman for his leadership on this issue and for including my bipartisan legislation, the No Fentanyl on Social Media Act, in the bill. During subcommittee consideration of the No Fentanyl on Social Media Act last year, I mentioned my background as a police officer in the Denver metro area and the tragic toll that I saw drugs like fentanyl take on the communities I worked in then and the communities I represent now. The proliferation of this drug over social media sites means that we have seen unacceptably high rates of drug overdose deaths among kids. Colorado logged the second highest youth overdose rate in the nation just 2 years ago.
Right. I gotta jump out and say, when it comes to stuff like this, it's profoundly terrible. My life has been impacted. I know people, everyone knows someone who's been impacted by the opioid epidemic. Okay. Opioids, bad shit. Okay. This is kind of, as terrible as this is, like putting this on social media, I'm afraid, again, it's like putting the cart before the horse. Like, this is a broad social issue that's existed well before social media came into play. It is exacerbated, it's worsened, it's gotten more bad based on how easy it is to connect and some of this. But this is not something, and a lot of these issues are not isolated to and didn't start with social media. So I think it's really important to keep in perspective.
With 75% of those overdoses being associated with fentanyl. Doing everything that we can in Congress to combat the scourge of this drug is a deeply personal mission for me, and I'll remind my colleagues that every 15 days under the previous administration, we lost the same number of Americans to drug overdoses as we lost in the entirety of the September 11th terrorist attacks. I'm a veteran of the global war on terror. I deployed overseas. That statistic speaks volumes, and that's why I'm grateful to see why my legislative proposal, which assesses the full scope of this challenge and presents a comprehensive set of solutions, is going to move forward in this committee. I also want to take a moment.
Yeah, I find it's a very narrow kind of law enforcement background perspective there. Opioids actually have ramped up tremendously, dramatically post 9/11. After the invasion of Afghanistan, for one thing, which is the opioid center of the planet originally, for a long time anyway. And also with domestic prescription opioids, right? I believe the Sackler family had something to do with, they were found liable in some civil cases. And even I believe there were criminal, at least investigations as well. And this is not like a social media thing and whatever. And in going into the 90s, there really wasn't much opioid use. People were pretty, they were pretty on the down, it was on the downswing. Okay, opioids were almost gone from our country. And after 9/11, it's become a problem. It's become a problem, and that is not because of social media.
Moment to highlight the historic nature of this legislation and the other bills that we're considering today and speak to the importance of congressional action in kids' online safety. This committee is standing up to big tech companies in a way that's going to be able to survive First Amendment challenges, and it's going to put American children first by requiring them to implement common sense default standards and empower parents with the oversight tools they need to protect their families. I'm a cop, spent over 10 years. I've personally put criminals behind bars who have exploited kids online. I'm a father of 2 boys, teenagers. I know that today's current internet landscape is a lawless environment that often puts kids in harm's way right under families' noses. I've personally met and worked with and responded to victims who would have benefited from reforms like are included in today's proposal, from age verification to parental monitoring tools. These aren't radical proposals. They're not even partisan proposals. The concept that you should verify a user's age before allowing them to download explicit apps is not controversial. The concept that chatbots should inform minors that they're chatbots, that they're AI, and that they should not encourage suicide is not controversial. The concept that big tech companies should give parents the tools that they need to intervene if their child is exposed to harmful materials online, that's not controversial. These are literally 80-20 issues. The American people are tired of inaction. We have to deliver common sense legislation that will survive all of the court challenges that will inevitably come and make sure that we give something durable that's going to protect kids. America's youth are at a crossroads. Nearly half of teenagers concede that social media as it exists today harms people their age. 55% of parents are either extremely or very worried about teen mental health. 9 out of 10 parents are concerned about their kids' own safety online. I've seen this. I've personally responded to countless situations of kids, youth, being a danger to themselves because of social media. And unfortunately, I've had to respond when kids took their own lives because of the pressures or the interactions that they experienced on social media. So to my colleagues across the aisle who are considering voting against these bills today, don't let partisan divides come between our shared goal of protecting our nation's kids. Join us in taking decisive action to make a meaningful, durable, lasting impact on future generations of Americans by putting our kids' well-being first. Chairman Guthrie, I want to thank you for your leadership again in this space. I implore all my colleagues today to join together in protecting kids, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and the chair will recognize the gentlelady from Colorado, Ms. DeGette, for 5 minutes for speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in your opening statement on these bills, you said this is not a moment for politics. And I agree. But I've been in Congress for a long time now, and I find that what happens is frequently, particularly during an election year like this year is, politicians will claim that legislation stands for things that it just doesn't do. I call it, I have a name for it, it's called fig leaf legislation. What we say is we have a terrible scourge in our country of online abuse of kids. And we see the result of it sitting right here today. And I want to thank all of these parents. I want to add my thanks to everybody sitting here today for the sacrifices you and your families have made. I also want to say every family sitting in this room wants Congress to work together in a bipartisan way to solve this problem, not to pass a fig leaf bill where we can all say, oh, it's a terrible problem and our kids deserve more, and we're going to pass a bill that benefits big data, that benefits these countries, and that actually does nothing to help solve more deaths. As I said, I've been here a long time, and for a long time, I've seen this committee work on bipartisan legislation to solve problems like this, and we can do it. More than 10 years ago, I was actually the chair of the Data Privacy Caucus with the former chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee, Joe Barton, a Republican from Texas. And we issued a joint statement to mark the 8th anniversary Data Privacy Day. And we said, 11 years ago, quote, "We live in a digital age of smartphones, tablets, and social media. It is vital that consumers are informed about their rights to privacy online. It's also vital that businesses are held accountable for keeping consumers' information safe. Digital innovation and preserving personal privacy can and should go hand in hand." I think back just a couple years ago to September 2024, when the committee produced bipartisan bills that were focused on the well-being of our kids, and the Senate passed their version 91-3. But 24 hours before our markup, the bill was mysteriously changed to restrict a company's duty of care to reasonably prevent and mitigate harms to minors. Now look, two of my wonderful colleagues have already explained in depth why this matters. Our leader, Kathy Castor, has explained why duty of care is so important. And our visionary, Congressman Auchincloss, explained about why preemption standards are so important in case there's a glitch, in case someone needs to assert their rights under state law. We owe it to our kids. We owe it to the kids whose pictures are breaking all of our hearts right now to get this right and to actually pass a bill and not a fig leaf bill. Because I'm going to tell you something. I don't want to be sitting here in a couple of years looking at this bill that we passed, this fig leaf bill. I don't want to be sitting here looking at the bill with a whole new crop of moms and dads holding a whole new set of photos of kids that we've lost because Congress did not achieve our goals, and we fell short of our commitment to the families of America. And I yield back.
Thank you. The gentlelady yields back. The chair recognizes Mrs. Fedorchak of North Dakota for 5 minutes for speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your leadership on this issue. I also want to acknowledge all the parents in the room. and recognize your pain and your concern. As a mother of 3, I share that. I have 3 children. My husband and I raised them in the wild, wild west of internet and online exposure. They're now 20, 22, and 24. So they were going through this when all of this was new. I remember the day my daughter came home and asked for Snapchat, and my husband and I looked at each other. What is Snapchat? And then she explained it and said, oh, it's this fun app where you get these photos and then they vanish. And my husband said, why would we ever allow you to have an app designed to send things that vanish? That can't be good. So we said no, and we said no and no and no. That was what we said all through their growing up. But it was really, really hard. We would turn on the parental control devices, have no clue how to use them.
Yeah, that's a pretty. It's like it's a tremendously fair point, and real concern. Most of all, because whether the user, whether you on your phone or the other person you might be talking to, whether you can see that or change that or send it back or withdraw the snap or delete it, the companies retain potentially, and most of them do actually, for whatever length of time, they just they hang on to that. Like that goes in the file somewhere. Like everything you've ever put on there, anyone, one way or the other, either by the company or sometimes on government side things because of national security. Okay, a lot of that stuff just gets filed away, if not forever, for a very long time. Okay, national security provisions in some cases, I believe it's 10 years, right? That is in the background. No one even sees that. That's just one thing out there that could be happening and may well be happening. Whatever the company does with it, I mean, you got to understand what you see in an app isn't all that's there. And most people don't fully appreciate that. So that's something more public education is needed on. It's not even just kids, especially kids, but everyone needs to understand what's going on with that. That's why data privacy matters so much. That's the more fundamental issue here.
We'd forget the passwords, then they'd be locked out for hours or days while we figured this all out. It was a wild, wild west. I would have loved to have some of the items included in this bill today that our chairman is bringing forward. It would have been a huge step in the right direction for my parent, for me, and my husband. Things like requiring the platforms to put safeguards in place to address harms for minors, limit design features that result in compulsive usage, online safeguards for kids that are turned on by default. That should be the standard. That's a simple change. Prohibiting platforms from advertising illegal.
So yeah, this is Mrs. Fedorchak, North Dakota. I'm gonna say that's almost, in my view, that's almost directly wrong. Basically, the internet was designed as a place where, really fundamentally, the assumption is you're an adult, and a reasonably responsible person. Since parents have decided en masse that it's more fun and easy in general to hand their children a device, a high-tech device. We're not talking about a simple toy that lights up and makes a noise or moves or something. We're talking about a high-tech device that has a lot of potential, a lot of capability. You could do good things, neutral things, or bad things with them. Outsourcing the parental responsibility, okay, and kind of just letting TV in a few years past or streaming or socials raise your kid. Okay, if that's what's going on, if like you're letting your kids, especially little kids, just go willy-nilly all over the internet and download apps and stuff, that's negligence. I mean, I'm just speaking from a tech standpoint. I'm certified IT, lifelong, basically computer guy. Now I'm not a parent myself, okay, and I am sympathetic to that, that needing to be addressed. But when it comes down to it, like parents have to have that responsibility. They have to, a parental accountability matters for child welfare, and those tools to prevent access to like downloading apps, to prevent, for example, in recent years, like Apple and stuff, streaming, or I should say, Apple from like, you have time, your time limitation. They implemented that years ago. If you don't understand the tech yourself and you're not involved, either of those things or both of those things is true, there's a parental lack of oversight. There's a parental negligence factor that's there. That's not. You can't put that on. You can to some extent, but you really can't reasonably put it on the companies to expect to need to babysit people on there. And the internet, again, was designed for reasonably capable, reasonably responsible people. It was not designed for people that need constant monitoring and care. And if you're leaving vulnerable people, not just kids, the elderly, they get texts, they get scams that come up, right? When all these things factor in, when you have people that need help and need protection, right, and they're just exposed online, that's a dangerous situation, and that's not something that big tech and legislation can solve. If it does solve it, it's probably in the direction of the duty of care is if you let your kid online in social media and great harm comes to them, you know whose responsibility ultimately it boils down to, I'd say, in terms of the share of the burden. I think a reasonable person says, where was the parent in looking after them? And there's definitely circumstances where that's there's an exception, right? But fundamentally, it has to start at home. And putting everybody in one big online daycare, right? Everybody starts out as a kid online unless proven otherwise. It's just not responsible. It's not reasonable. It's not responsible. Can't be done. So I'm gonna let this play. I gotta take a quick call. I'm gonna be here though.
Products to kids, prohibiting platforms from defaulting to algorithms that feed minors more and more the information they're interested in. I love this one, providing parental controls over minors' app downloads, just not allowing minors to download apps at will without a parent being involved. These are significant steps in the right direction. It will allow states' attorney generals to enforce federal standards. Enforcement is a huge piece of the challenge. Bringing our local and state officials on board to help with that is a step in the right direction. It's not perfect. I will admit it's not perfect, but there's some really powerful tools here, and I urge my colleagues on the other side to join us, take these steps forward. We can do more down the road, but this is a very important step in the right direction. So thank you, Mr. Guthrie, for bringing it forward. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back, and the chair recognizes the gentlelady from Massachusetts, Ms. Trahan, for 5 minutes to speak on the bill.
I move to strike the last word.
The gentlelady is recognized to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Protecting our kids online is one of the most urgent responsibilities that we face. It's a crisis for families in every community, in every state in our country, with devastating consequences as represented by the parents here today holding pictures of their lost children, their beautiful kids. That's why.
Back on the stream, I am going to rewind this just a little bit.
Chairman.
Yields back.
So thank you, Mr. More down the road, but this is a very important. Join us, take these steps, and I urge my colleagues.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, whoa. So, yeah, definitely not perfect, as she was saying, and definitely requires further thought. This is a long hearing. So let me actually find the spot here.
Chairman, and thank you to my good.
That's for 5 minutes. Yield back.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a misclick. Thanks for hanging in. Where were we here?
Gentlelady yields back.
Mr. Amendment, and I urge my colleagues to do the same.
Right.
From Indiana's.
You continuously, it is extremely important we don't allow this big loophole. I ask unanimous consent at this time to withdraw my amendment and look forward to continuing to working on the issue.
Without objection, the amendment's withdrawn. There are further amendments to the gentlelady from Florida is recognized, or what purpose is gentlelady from Florida seek
I have an
recognition?
amendment at the desk. It's Castor 049.
Castor 049. Clerk will report.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7757, offered by Ms.
Without objection, the reamendment is dispensed with, and the gentlelady from Florida.
Mr. Chairman, reserve a point of order.
Point of order is reserved. A gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes in support of her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get to the heart of my amendment, I have some good news out of the U.S. Senate, and I want to bring it up now because it gives us an opportunity later when we get to COPPA 2.0 to actually do something meaningful. The United States Senate has just passed COPPA 2.0, which is essentially the Castor-Wahlberg version from the last Congress by unanimous consent this morning. So I highlight that because we could, when we get to that bill, reinstitute the bipartisan version and speed it on its way to passage. But this amendment, back to the KOSA and the KIDS Act, would close the loopholes that exist throughout the Republican bill that would allow big tech to continue to harm kids, their safety, and their privacy. My amendment does two things. It strengthens the knowledge standard and it clarifies the preemption language. A stronger knowledge standard will hold the tech companies accountable. Otherwise, companies claim ignorance, right? They argue that they cannot be held responsible because they don't know who is using their platforms or what is happening on them, even though we know this is false. An actual knowledge standard that is applied throughout the bill right now is a giant loophole because proving actual knowledge is an incredibly high bar for enforcers to meet. It allows the social media companies to continue. They look the other way when their platforms are harming kids, and they leave parents and regulators with the burden of proving the company's intentions in court. So my updated knowledge standard expands it to they have to have actual knowledge or to have knowledge fairly implied on the basis of objective circumstances. We know, based upon recent testimony in court cases brought by grieving parents, that the companies are aware of their harmful content. Yet they continue to try to hide behind these knowledge standards. Whistleblowers have corroborated these findings, showing that it is a deliberate choice to turn a blind eye to the foreseeable dangers. Families deserve assurance that companies like Meta cannot hide behind these knowledge standards. So what my amendment does, it closes this loophole throughout the entire package. We're going to create a legal framework that applies comprehensively across all of the provisions of the law. It ensures that knowledge standards are applied consistently and that platforms cannot pick and choose where they will act. This is a cohesive approach that is essential for the law to function effectively. It links legal duties and risk mitigation and platform responsibility. Additionally, my amendment also addresses preemption because we do not want to leave any room for companies to undermine state-level protections or claims. This makes clear that the law's protective intent is uniform, it's enforceable, and not subject to contradictory interpretations that could weaken safeguards for children. Members, this amendment is kind of the heart of the difference. It is the giant loophole that tech companies will exploit. And I know you don't want to be party to that. I've heard you loud and clear that you are sincerely interested in making a difference and standing up to the tech companies. This is the amendment to prove it, along with what we can do to get COPPA 2.0 back to the bipartisan version. This is about accountability, consistency, and protection, but things you can say you believe in, but if you keep the version as it is now, you belie all of the intent. Frankly, it looks like already big tech's fingerprints are all over this bill. They figured out a clever way to veil, this is a cleverly veiled way to gut stronger state protections under the guise of child safety, and we just shouldn't stand for it. We need to craft a strong law together. And we can do this. We did it before in the last Congress. There's no reason why we should capitulate to the tech companies now. Let's stand up for kids. Let's reinsert the heart of the matter here with a stronger preemption, stronger standard that they can't use as a shield in court. It's up to the responsibility that we have to kids and families, not the big tech companies. They have too much power here. Let's show them today that we stand with the parents and families.
So, I mean, I'm not hearing a lot of specifics, or this is kind of just them selling their bills at this point. So, depending on how this goes, I might want to wrap this up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I seek recognition to speak in opposition to this amendment. And I want to thank my colleague from the Sunshine State for opening up and dovetailing this for me. She said that big tech's fingerprints are all over this bill. I find that to be a little bit hypocritical, considering that the only proposal that was offered to this committee was actually written by big tech, and they offered it. But I can tell you whose fingerprints are all over this amendment. The trial attorneys. The trial attorneys wrote this amendment. See, this amendment introduces a vague constructive knowledge standard that will act as a blank check for regulatory abuse by an undoubtedly future weaponized FTC. How do I know that? Well, one, I served on the Weaponization Committee last Congress, and I witnessed an overreach that you cannot even begin to imagine.